The next morning, June 24th, 2025, I decided to take a different route out of Kalam. Instead of heading back the way I came, I turned east, toward Kumrat Valley. It's not the obvious choice. Most travelers reach Kumrat from the town of Thal in Upper Deer coming in from the west, but there is another way, a mountain route that crosses the Badogai Pass linking Swat to Upper Deer. On the map it doesn't look like much. In reality, it's something else entirely. The road starts off quietly enough. Leaving Kalam, you pass through small settlements, and for a while it still feels like an extension of the valley. Trees, river, scattered houses, but that changes quickly. The road begins to climb, and the surface deteriorates almost at the same time. Paved sections disappear, replaced by dirt, gravel, and loose stones. The track narrows, the incline increases, and before long it's clear that this is not a normal road. This is an off-road track. The Badogai Pass sits at over 3,500 meters, and getting there means dealing with everything that comes with that kind of terrain. Steep gradients, unstable surfaces, and long stretches where there's no margin for error. In many places, the track is just wide enough for one vehicle. On one side, the mountain rises sharply. On the other, the slope falls away, sometimes gradually, sometimes not. It's also the kind of road that is really meant for 4x4 vehicles. That becomes obvious very quickly. Most of the traffic I saw were jeeps, often packed with people, supplies, or both. This is not a route for standard cars, and even among drivers here it's considered a difficult road. For motorcyclists, it's another level again. At first I made steady progress, slow, controlled, picking my way through the rough sections. But as I climbed higher, the surface changed. The ground became looser, more sand mixed with gravel, and the incline became steeper. And that combination is not ideal on a motorcycle. Eventually, I reached a stretch where the slope was just too steep and too loose. I tried a few times, each time the same result. The bike struggling, sliding slightly, refusing to climb. At that point you have to make a decision, push harder or stop. Eight's when a Jeep coming down the mountain slowed and stopped. E-driver had seen what was happening. Without much discussion, he offered to help. D, this is one of those moments you don't forget, loaded the motorcycle onto the top of the Jeep. T, something you planned for, but in a place like this you adapt. Within minutes, I went from struggling on the track to sitting inside the vehicle, watching the same road from a completely different perspective. From inside the Jeep, the difficulty of the route became even clearer. The angles, the drop-offs, the constant uneven surface, you could see why this road has the reputation it does. It's not just rough, it's demanding. The climb continued, slowly working its way up toward the pass. Higher altitude, thinner air, and a landscape that becomes more exposed the further you go. Less vegetation, more rock, more open space. Eventually, we crossed the high point and began descending toward Thal, the gateway to Kumrat Valley. From there, the landscape began to soften again. The harshness of the upper slopes gave way to greener areas, the return of trees, and the sense that you were entering a different kind of valley. Kumrat Valley itself is known for its forests, rivers, and wide open pastures. The Panchkora River runs through it, and during the summer months, it attracts visitors looking for a quieter, less developed alternative to places like Swat. But getting there is part of the experience, and in this case, not a simple one. When I arrived in Thal, I expected things to settle down, but that wasn't quite the case. A local police or military officer approached and offered to escort me into the valley. So once again, I found myself riding, not entirely on my own. We continued into Kumrat, following the river deeper into the valley, until I reached a lodge. After a long and physically demanding day, that's all I wanted: a shower, a chance to wash my clothes, and a bit of rest. For a short time, that's exactly what I got. But then, there was a knock on the door. The police wanted to speak with me. They had a concern about my visa. According to them, I only had 1 day left in Pakistan. But that wasn't correct. The date they were looking at was my entry deadline, the last day I was allowed to enter the country, not the duration of my stay. From that point, I had 90 days. I tried to explain. We went back and forth. Documents were checked, phone calls were made, but the situation didn't resolve easily. At one point, a higher-ranking officer spoke on the phone, and the message was clear: if I did not leave by 12 p.m. the next day, I would be arrested. At that stage, there wasn't much room to argue. Right or wrong, the decision had been made. So that night, instead of resting in Kumrat Valley, I found myself back on the road, escorted. Again, we rode for hours, through the mountains in the dark with no real sense of distance, just following the vehicle ahead. Time stretches in those situations. You stop thinking about where you are and just focus on continuing. It wasn't until around 3 a.m. that we finally stopped at a resort hotel.